and I won't back down. Hey, baby, there ain't no easy way out. Hey, everybody, thanks so much for joining us right here on The Right View. Tonight, we're joined by PragerU's Franklin Camargo and the Daily Caller's Mary Rooke. Mary and Franklin, welcome to both of you. I feel like just when I think they can't reach any lower on the left in terms of their Trump derangement syndrome, they always impress me with just how crazy, Mary, they can get. We saw over the past week plus that all these lunatics, like a week ago, were getting all wound up because they didn't see Donald Trump for like 2 days. And they were sure, Mary, that he was dead. They were sure that there was something really wrong with the president. And I thought it was really funny earlier this week when he obviously appeared and he was totally fine. I mean, I think there were pictures of him on like Labor Day or something playing golf with my niece Kai. After they obsessed over his possible death, the president came out and he said, I didn't do anything for 2 days. And they said, there must be something wrong with him. Meanwhile, Mary, we would go like weeks on end back about a year or so ago and not see Joe Biden, who was the president of the United States at the time. And nobody batted an eyelash. Nobody thought anything of it. All of a sudden, we're so used to now seeing Donald Trump out there basically hourly on our television screens, talking to the press, engaging with people. He's out of the picture for 2 days and everybody assumes the worst. And of course, the crazies out there, Mary, were hoping for the worst.
Oh, weren't they ever? I thought it was really hilarious because, as this was kicking off, I knew my friend and colleague Reagan Reese was actually interviewing Trump in the White House at that time. So, I'm starting to see all these tweets come on Twitter, and they're like, he's dead. They just don't want to tell us. There's something wrong with him. He's sick. I'm like, no, Reagan's just interviewing him right now. He's busy talking to one of Daily Caller's own. So I thought that was really hilarious. I was texting her and being like, it's so funny. You're going to stop the news because of your interview right now, because you're going to come out and say, actually, I was interviewing for him for a couple hours yesterday. That's why you didn't see a press conference. I also think it's funny that he came out and I think that he said this at some sort of event where he was like, they thought that there was something wrong with me. So I made them sit through a 3-hour press conference then the next day to get up for it or something like that. I thought that was really hilarious. But no, we were so used to being like, where is Joe Biden? Let's try and find him. Oh, he's on the beach in Delaware again, or he's hiding out in his house with who knows who, So it's just such a different presidency. If he's not out at 8 a.m. and 11 o'clock p.m., everybody's wondering if something wrong is happening. But I actually think this is a good thing. As funny and as insane as it all is, it just shows that even the left recognizes how hard Donald Trump works, that if he's not there 24/7, they're like, oh no, there must be something wrong with him because, this just wasn't how it was under Biden.
Yeah, Franklin, we went for 4 years with basically a guy who was MIA. Joe Biden was never around. I mean, in some respects, you could say that was a blessing. But then again, we got the House Oversight Committee still working on who the heck was running things in the White House, who was signing all those executive orders with the auto pen, et cetera, right? So we're still looking into that. It's so funny to me, too, because I think it was just days or a day before he kind of, quote unquote, disappeared. He had a 3+ hour a televised cabinet meeting, right? Yeah. He sat there with the entire cabinet and was going over everything that was happening in the country with all of his cabinet secretaries for over 3 hours. Okay, we know Donald Trump is doing well. Here's one of the more disgusting things that was said, though. Joy Reid, who I think we all remember lost her show on MSNBC, rightly so, because I don't know who was tuning into that, Franklin. Listen to this rant she had whenever all of this was going on about a week ago. She said, the reality is this is the oldest president we've ever had in our history. Sidebar, where was she talking about Joe Biden's mental decline? I digress. She never did. His father, I believe, died out of the complications of Alzheimer's. He's showing clear signs that he isn't well. How's that, Joy? Where are you seeing that? He's got all these bruises all over his hands, which we don't know what that's from. Yeah, we do. He takes aspirin and he shakes hands with a lot of people, and people grip President Trump's hand, in a pretty rough way. He's a tough guy. They want to show that they're tough. Okay. They won't explain it, she says. He's got these magical doctors who claim he was shot in the ear, but his ear, I guess, grew back. Here's where it gets really gross, Franklin. He had the bandage on 1 minute, no bandage the next. We can't get a medical record from this alleged assassination. He was supposedly shot. We have nothing. We can't even ask. So, Franklin, let me get this straight. Joy Reid it jumps in on these rumors swirling that there's something wrong with President Trump because he disappears for 48 hours. And now all of a sudden she's claiming that there was like this assassination attempt wasn't real. He was shot in the ear. Yeah. Okay. Like that to me is, I mean, it's a new low for Joy Reid of all people. I'll say that. What'd you think of all of it overall, though, Franklin? Because I think people are just, Donald Trump is driving them all crazy, especially Joy Reid.
It is a disgrace. I would simply laugh that these people actually have some type of power and influence. You know, they have followers, they have an audience. Even Joy Reid, I mean, we know her audience is very small, but we saw Politico also talking about this, MSNBC, CNN. And, you know, there is an actual coincidence here. The same people who were willing to lie about Joe Biden for 4 years are the same people that are now asking questions and concerned about the president because he hasn't spoken for 48 hours. And here's the fact, actually Donald Trump has been the most active president in modern history. In just his first 100 days, he had more than 129 interactions, whether he would answer questions to a reporter, he would hold a press conference, he would sit and have a 1 hour interview. So this is the type of president we have. Whether you like it or not, we know the left doesn't like it. He's an active president. We know he's working really hard. Even J.D. Vance says, he calls me sometimes at 2 a.m., at 3 a.m. So this is the president we have. It's not just about age, it's about health, and it's about results. It's about delivering for the American people. So the people and the individuals who are pushing this narrative are the same who were willing to lie about Joe Biden, and not just lie to cover up his presidency. They were also willing to die so he could be president. So he could be president for 4 more years. Because let's remember about this. We only have in mind that Kamala Harris, she was the candidate, and Trump beat her hugely, easily. But Joe Biden was a candidate until July last year. They wanted him to be president for 4 more years so they could have control over him. Because we don't really know who was president for 4 years. So it is a disgrace because these people call themselves journalists. They would say that there are a lot of conspiracy theories on the right-wing movement and Republicans, and they are the ones pushing fake rumors, pushing lies, not questioning Democrats, not questioning power when it comes to the left, but then they would say the craziest things when it's about Donald Trump. There was an assassination attempt. Everyone saw it. It was horrible. It was a sad day for America. Thankfully, God protected him and saved him for a reason. We know that. But the fact that people like Joe Reid and even some politicians, some Congress people are willing to embrace those lies is very disrespectful to the American people.
Yeah, it's also disrespectful to the man who lost his life at that rally. It's disrespectful to the individuals who were shot and survived, to all the people who witnessed that, who were probably traumatized by what they saw, the families who were never going to have holidays again with their father, their husband, that's also disrespectful. Honestly, I can't even believe, I couldn't believe after that assassination attempt that there were people trying to suggest that somehow it was like a staged situation, Mary. I remember going to the Republican National Convention, and at the time I was the RNC co-chair, and so I was doing a lot of interviews with a lot of people, and there were outlets who asked me, like point blank, about the fact that there were people out there saying, well, this was fake, it was staged. It was very real, Mary. I find it shocking that, and it actually goes to show you how gullible people are. And the fact that you still have Joy Reid trying to push this sort of like absolute trash and garbage out there, I don't even know what to say about it. I think it's absolutely disgraceful.
You know what I think it really is? I think that moments like that in American history typically bring Americans together no matter what side of the aisle you're on. It happened when JFK was assassinated. It didn't matter if you voted for him or not. The entire country came together
Right.
and warned a president. And so I think what scared them the most is that it was going to be something that happened to Trump that brought the entire country together. And that it would be because of Trump that Democrats and Republicans do not hate each other anymore. And that was the fear that pushed them to push these wild conspiracy theories that it never happened, or that it wasn't what he said it was, or what the doctor said it was. I was like shocked to death that it happened. And then I immediately started talking to my editor, and I was like, well, the left is going to have to take their foot off the gas at this point. Like, they can't continue the dangerous rhetoric because it's clearly trying to kill the man. And so I write this, and I get a piece approved, and I write this piece where it's like they no longer have their golden ticket to be able to say and defame and like call him a dictator and all these things, because it's clearly trying to kill him. And by the time that piece was published, within an hour, they were already doing it. Yeah. Like, that's how quickly it happened. And I'm sitting here shocked. I'm like, I couldn't believe what I was saying coming out of the press at the time. And so I had to sit back and reflect, why would they do this? And that's why I think it's truly and honestly because they hate Trump so much that the idea of him bringing the country together or putting us in a place of peace scared them more than anything else, because they knew there's no way to fight that.
Yeah, they've worked so hard to demonize this one man, right? And so I think you're right. I think the idea that anybody could rally behind him or find anything to kind of come together on as it relates to Donald Trump was terrifying to so many of these people. They staked their entire reputation on the fact that he's a bad guy and that there were all these things. I always bring him up, the likes of Adam Schiff, who tried to claim that, of course, he was colluding with Russia during the first campaign. The whole thing, it's nuts. But they did, by the way, Franklin, the thing about all of it is there was so much kind of hateful rhetoric out there that there were people who tried to kill Donald Trump. They tried to do it twice. And there was actually a woman, a New York City woman, who was recently locked up for making social media posts online threatening to kill President Trump. Now, this woman was very recently released by Chief U.S. District Judge James Boasberg. He was, of course, appointed by President Obama. This is the same judge, by the way, who kept a lot of January 6th defendants locked up really unnecessarily. And a lot of people say, violated a lot of their rights by doing so. Let me give you an example of what this woman, by the way, who rightfully was detained and now is out thanks to this Obama appointed judge, wrote online. She said, "I literally told FBI in 5 states today that I'm willing to sacrificially kill this POTUS by disemboweling him and cutting out his trachea with Liz Cheney and all the affirmation present. Let's deal with this and restore domestic tranquility." Sounds pretty rough, Franklin. I don't know that that's a person who I want out there on the street. This is my father-in-law, right? Like, this is our president, but this is my father-in-law. Doesn't make me feel comfortable that this woman is now out there free to walk around and disembowel, if she could have her way, the president of the United States.
So again, the same people who would go after after citizens for not wearing a mask, or for trying to open their businesses, or for not getting a vaccine, or for protesting peacefully, are the same people who think that a woman who is literally threatening the president of the United States should be on the streets. So here's where the questions start. Why are they willing to use force to have their desires? At the end, the American people chose Donald Trump, and they have to follow the law, and they have to follow the Constitution. Donald Trump is going to be president until January 2029, whether they like it or not. He won an election. And what I think, and this is very sad and very unfortunate right now, actually, is that the left's moral compass is broken. It's not even more about ideas or normal disagreements. They go against everything that Trump proposes, everything that Trump says, even when he's the most common sense ideas that you could ever think of. And they even go after Trump as a person. So everyone would agree that, trying to assassinate a politician or any individual is evil, is bad. When it comes to Trump, they prefer to ignore it. So this is actually very unfortunate. It is dangerous, and it shouldn't happen. You know, it's the United States of America. I escaped a dictatorship. I escaped a country where politicians are prosecuted by the government. So when people that have power in the Justice Department, or they have local power in certain areas of our country, they are willing to put at risk our republic just because of their political desires, is very, very dangerous. And now, you know, we have journalists, we have media outlets that are not willing to talk about what we're talking about right now, or that are not willing to criticize that. So it's a very dangerous situation that we are at.
Where are you from originally, Franklin?
Venezuela.
I thought that was right. Well, it brings us to our next topic, which I'd love to get your take on this, and obviously Mary too. You know, Donald Trump at the beginning of his second term in office designated drug cartels and foreign gangs as terrorist organizations, which I think is completely accurate. And it, of course, allows, you know, our government, our law enforcement to treat them differently than they had in the past. And I think that's a good thing, because these people have infiltrated and taken advantage of our country for far too long. You look at the border crossings. You look at, you know, Tren de Aragua, Franklin from Venezuela, right? You look at all of these groups. They're no good. They're bringing drugs into this country. It's killing 100,000 Americans every year. We know that with the drug overdoses, with fentanyl. Not to mention, of course, we've seen them take over apartment complexes. We've seen crime. We've seen violence. We've seen, you know, so much bad stuff happen because of these individuals. You had, of course, this video that the administration released. It was the U.S. military strike on a Tren de Aragua drug boat off of Venezuela. Now, this is apparently in international waters. What really got to me, though, and I think what I found most shocking, is it was exactly, Mary, and I'm going to come to you too, Franklin, on this, but Mary, it's exactly what Franklin just said, which is that, you know, whatever it is Donald Trump does, the left obviously has to go against it. It doesn't matter that he's cleaning up crime in Washington, D.C. It doesn't matter that he's offering to send the National Guard troops into places like Chicago to help them clean up things and get the murders down, etc. They're going against all of it. And one of the things they got outraged about over the last weekend and the end of last week was this footage of this Tren de Aragua drug boat being blown up. Well, guess what? These people they're trying to kill Americans. What they're bringing into this country is there to kill Americans. And we have every right as a country to defend ourselves from it. And I loved what Marco Rubio said. He said interdiction doesn't work because these drug cartels, what they do is they know they're going to lose 2% of their cargo. They bake it into their economics. What will stop them is when you blow them up, Mary. I'm all for this sort of thing. A lot of people, of course, Democrats, felt very upset by this.
Yeah, you know what? Trump has this really uncanny ability to get Democrats to say that they love drug dealers and murderers and rapists like on a daily basis. It's pretty wild at this point, because when you talk about somewhere like Chicago that also has a gang influence and cartel influence there, and I believe that maybe it was Don Lemon who was interviewing people on the street, and they were like, do you want Trump to come here? Or no, it was Washington, D.C. They were like, do you want Trump to bring in the National Guard? And this guy was like, yes, I think that's a great idea. It's horrible here. People are getting murdered left and right. And Don Lemon's like, okay, thank you so much for your time.
I go next. Well, we don't want to get that.
Yeah, this is exactly how that is. You know, I live in Texas. Drug, you know, cartels and human trafficking has been an issue since I was a kid. I remember we have land down in South Texas on the border of Mexico, and we couldn't keep anything of value in our cabin down there, and eventually ended up having to just write it off as a wreckage because of how much smuggling came through. They would break our windows, they'd steal all the stuff inside. I mean, it was horrible. But then the worst part about it is when you're traveling the land and you see the devastation of the innocent people that are there, like the leftover clothes and the shoes behind, and you know, that kind of stuff. And when you're a kid, you don't really understand it, but as you get older, you really understand like what that was. There is nothing about a drug cartel that's innocent, or that, you know, we should be labeled as just, you know, some criminal gang. What they are narco terrorists. They use pain and they use suffering and they use it to their advantage. They do the most horrible acts to people who have any type of ability to defy them or push back against their will. And if we allow them to continue to push north into our country, I mean, you look at Miami, you look at Texas, look at Louisiana, I mean, they're taking up entire areas of these states. So if we allow them to continue to push north inward into our country, what are we saying about our borders? What are we saying about our national security? What are we saying about the value of American citizens? I think that what Trump did, designating them as a terrorist organization, was the absolute right move to do. It puts American safety first, and anyone on the right or the left who has, you know, anything to say about due process or we can't just be blowing up terrorist boats, I'd like for them to step out of their ivory tower for just one moment and see the real devastation these people bring into our country. And if they're not willing to do that, then please just sit down, shut up, and let the Trump administration do what it needs to do to keep my family safe, because I'm not willing to listen to your BS anymore.
Women need to take maintaining our strength seriously. No matter how active you are, as we get older, it can catch us all off guard. Your sleep, your energy, your balance, everything can just start to feel off. I started using the Juvent Micro Impact platform when I learned how quickly women start to lose bone density, especially in our 40s. The Juvent Micro Impact platform, however, supports your body's natural ability to rebuild bone density, circulation, and even stem cells. In just 20 minutes a day, I started to feel more energized, more stable and grounded in my everyday workouts, more myself. Your body knows how to heal. Juvent helps it remember. Take your strength seriously. You can save $300 now at juvent.com with code Lara. Okay, we're going to get back to all of that on the show, but I really want to tell you about Strong Cell. Strong Cell is a great tasting, refreshing daily supplement drink in a simple 2-ounce sip, and it's packed. It's packed with clean, healthy ingredients, and this is important, NADH. It's one of the most powerful nutrients that your cells need to absolutely thrive. Here's the reality. As much as we don't want to admit it, as we age, our cellular health starts to break down, which can mean a lot of things: low energy, brain fog, aging-related issues. But with Strong Cell, your cells can get what they need and your entire body wakes up. This is natural, sustained energy. It's mental clarity and that feeling of being recharged from the inside out. Here's the truth. Every vital organ in your body runs on healthy cells. And if your cells aren't working, then you're not working either. So you need to try Strong Cell. Go to strongcell.com and learn more about how Strong Cell can help you feel like you again. That's try Strong Cell, TryStrongCell.com, and use discount code Lara at checkout to save 20%. You know what, Franklin, I totally agree, Mary. Well said. The thing about it to me is it feels like we've had, like, if you ever notice kids who have parents who don't discipline them, right? There's a lot of threats, and these kids know the threats are just like BS. Like, they're not going to get punished by their parents, and so they just do whatever they want. But the parents who actually follow through, you say, if you do that again, then here's going to be your punishment. You follow through on it. Guess what? Your kid's not playing around with you the next time. They're not going to try and get away with it. That's what this is. This is like, yes, we finally got a parent who is actually laying down the law and actually following through on what he says. So I'm just going to read very quickly the end of what Donald Trump posted after this strike. He said the strike resulted in 11 terrorists killed in action. No U.S. forces were harmed in this strike. Please let this serve as notice to anybody even thinking about bringing drugs into the United States of America. Beware. Thank you for your attention to this matter. This, amazing, Franklin, is a great deterrent. Guess what? We want people to know we are serious here in America. Don't bring the drugs here. Don't come in here with your gangs. We're not dealing with it anymore because Dad's home, he's not taking your crap anymore, and he's laying down the law.
Yes, and it's exactly what is happening. You know, during the 4 years of the Biden administration, they simply downplayed the Venezuelan regime. Now the Trump administration, Marco Rubio, they recognize what the Venezuelan regime is a narco-terrorist state. They produce 20 to 25% of the world's cocaine. They also send criminals to the United States.
Yeah.
Lincoln Riley Sadly, she was killed by a member of Tren Doragua. So now those leftists who are crying out about these strikes and these military actions that we're seeing against drug traffickers, against terrorists, are people who do not care about American lives. I support this not because I was born in Venezuela. I was born in Venezuela, yes, that's and I'm proud of my background, but my allegiance is to the United States. And the US government has a right and a duty to protect its borders. And right now that means trying to do anything that it can to try to stop the Venezuelan regime sending more criminals or sending drug traffickers. This is actually amazing. And look at the contrast between the administrations. 3 years ago, in October 2022, Joe Biden released the nephews of Nicolas Maduro, the narco nephews. They were found guilty of trying to smuggle over 17 pounds of cocaine to the United States. And Biden simply released them. Well, this week we saw how the US government took out 11 narco terrorists. They made their choice. They decided to be terrorists. They decided to cause harm into the United States, and they paid for their actions. So I fully support this, and I love the words that Marco Rubio had about the United Nations, because the United Nations was complaining about what the US government did. Of course, they always complain about a Western country with good values and principles who is trying to have order in their country and protect its people. But they love cuddling with China, Russia, Venezuela, Cuba. In the United Nations Human Rights Council, some of its members in the last few years have been Venezuela. Venezuela talking about human rights in the United Nations, or Cuba, or Russia, or China. And now they are complaining because the US has a good government that protects its people and puts in a government that puts its people first. So this is a great action. It's a dramatic contrast from what we had for 4 years of the Biden administration, because the Venezuelan regime, the narco-terrorist state, is killing Americans every single day through drugs and criminal gangs. So this it's a great action, it's a great policy, and actually, it's not just Americans are happy, Venezuelans are happy, and not just in Miami or the United States. Venezuelans in Venezuela, they support Donald Trump, Lara. You have no idea how much they support Donald Trump and these type of actions, because are the same terrorists that are also oppressing, Venezuelans in Venezuela.
Yeah.
So they fully support this. The only people who do not like this are leftists and globalists.
Yeah, well, and I'm fairly certain Maduro has been designated as a terrorist himself. I think there's a bounty on his head of, I don't even know how much money it's up to now. But
50 million.
is it 50 million? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, this president's not playing around. That's so interesting though to hear, and I love to hear that the people of Venezuela, because I mean they're suffering too, right, Franklin?
Yeah.
Like they must want to get rid of this guy and this group of people too, because they're having to live day to day under this regime.
Yes, it's a very, we know the economic situation in Venezuela is very hard, but not just that. It's a terrorist organization. And that's what makes it unique about Venezuela. It's not just another government that we dislike or even just another dictatorship. It's a narco-terrorist state that has been sending drugs to the US. They use the Caribbean Sea as its trafficking highway straight into America. So when I hear people on the left, Democrats, criticizing Trump for his actions, I cannot understand. Like, don't they want to protect American lives? Don't they want to protect so there is not a next, someone like dies like Lakin Riley did?
Right.
She was killed by a member of Tren Doragua, or someone like Jocelyn Nungaray in Texas was also killed by a member of Tren Doragua. Or we don't want people to die from fentanyl or cocaine. Well, in order to do that, we need to do everything that we have to stop these criminals. So it is actually crazy and interesting that the people who are complaining about this are, people on the left, Democrats, and it's part of what we were talking about earlier. I think the Republican Party right now and Donald Trump has represented a common sense revolution. And leftists, as their moral compass is completely broken, they would go against anything that Trump does or says, even when it's common sense, like stopping criminals, stopping terrorists. And yes, they are terrorists because they engage in terrorist activity, as simple as that.
Well, I think the left knows, Mary, that they're in trouble, and their allies in the fake news media have been trying to help them for a long time. We saw it, of course, during the, I mean, God, we've seen it how many times, but it was so glaring and so obvious and just absolutely like smacked you in the face when 60 Minutes edited the Kamala Harris interview. Of course, Donald Trump won a lawsuit against them and won $36 million for that. They settled that lawsuit. The folks at CBS, I guess, finally got the message. You had Kristi Noem last week, who was on Face the Nation, and they whittled down her answer about an MS-13 member, Kilmer Abrego Garcia, who, of course, we all have heard his name before. She was talking about deporting him and about the rationale behind that and about what a bad guy he ultimately was. Because don't forget, the left tried to paint this guy as like a Maryland dad. Like he's this wholesome guy who, you know, everybody should be upset that he was deported. And they removed 26 seconds of Secretary Noem's interview specifically talking about him. And so they now say, Mary, don't worry, everybody. Now we can sit back and relax. They promise to release only unedited or live interviews from now on. I don't know, Mary, what took them so long to figure this out. This was very basic and very obvious. Whenever what you're doing is going to further a political narrative or ideology, that's not journalism. And CBS wants us to take them seriously, I assume. So I guess it's about time, Mary. Maybe we can feel good about this. I don't know how many people are trusting them anymore. I mean, I think the legacy media's approval rating is at an all-time low right now.
I would agree. You know, if I were Kristi Noem, I would actually be asking them to please continue to edit what I'm saying, because it had the Barbra Streisand effect where, you know, maybe people on the right would have picked up what she had said on CBS had they aired the whole thing, but now the entire world knows what she said.
That's right.
And so it's such a bigger story and it makes such a bigger impact. So if I were her, I'd say, actually, if you wouldn't mind just clipping off a little 26 seconds off everything I say, so then that way I can get a chance to, you know, slam you down afterwards, and then the entire world knows. No, I think that the reality is that they can do what they want. They can all of a sudden release the unedited version and, you know, do that moving forward. But it has the same effect as 60 Minutes when, you know, they pulled the sham job with Kamala Harris and with Donald Trump in the last election, where it's like no one really takes them seriously. And when I was growing up, 60 Minutes was like the gold standard.
Yeah.
If there was a documentary or an expose or something being highlighted on 60 Minutes, you were watching and you were paying attention because all of a sudden that meant something. It doesn't have that same effect anymore. I think that they're waking up to realize that at CNN, at CBS, at ABC, at MSNBC, that people are no longer looking at them as the gold standard of, you know, fact checking or reality. And I think that's why you see this rise and you know, kind of journalism that's like outside of that legacy media square, because people are looking for the truth and they don't care really which side it comes from. They just want to know the actual facts of something. And if you're willing to show an unedited video, if you're willing to give an entire transcript out, then that's the actual truth. And so people are going to follow you. I think it's really funny that it's taken them this long to make this like simple adjustment, which is to just do the basics of your job. But, you know, here we are. Now we all know that he is an MS-13 wife beater and no one should actually feel bad for him. And that was a great thing for America, I think.
It's basic. I mean, you're so right. Like, all we want is people to just give us the information. Like, just, it's so easy. It should be so easy. But you know what, Franklin? I give Donald Trump full credit for the fact that we are actually even talking about this, because most people would have seen what happened with that Kamala Harris interview. I mean, we all saw it. First of all, my favorite part is that they went back. They were like, let's help her out. Let's make this interview sound better for her. It was still a complete car crash of an interview. It was horrible. She sounded awful. I mean, like she mostly did throughout the course of her 107 Days, the title of her book. I'm sure you both are getting a copy. It didn't help her at all. But, you know, they went out of their way to do this, and most people on the other side of it would have been like, well, that was wrong to do, but we'll just move on with life. Donald Trump was like, hold on a second. Not so fast there. this was not only just completely like crazy and ridiculous, but what you did was intended to sway the outcome of a presidential election. And that is a big problem, and I'm going to sue you for it. And to, his credit, he got $36 million out of CBS for this. But we wouldn't even be talking about this, Franklin, if not for the backbone of an individual like Donald Trump, who said, you know what, I'm not playing the game the same way everybody has from, the beginning of time until now. We're doing things differently. I'm going to call the shots differently. I'm going to call things like I see them, and I'm going to be very honest, even if it's upsetting to some people, even if it hurts some people's feelings. So I'm giving full credit to my father-in-law on this one.
Yeah, and so do I, honestly. And at the end, let people decide. Let people think for themselves. Give them the information, the full information about their government, about the statements, about what is going on, and let them decide. Like this interview, this Christine Um's interview, they cut 26 seconds, but not just 26 seconds. It was the most important information about the Albergo Garcia case. And in this case, by the way, is the most bizarre, insane that I could ever imagine. Because Democrats right now, after the election, they are like, why did Latinos vote for Trump? I cannot understand why legal immigrants supported Trump. They voted for him. I cannot imagine. Well, maybe because you want to keep people like Albergo Garcia in the United States. You know that we actually escaped from Albergo Garcia and people like that when we left our countries behind. And the information that they wanted to cut about Albergo Garcia is that he was a smuggler and he was a wife beater, and he even requested inappropriate pictures from minors. So that's the type of individual that shouldn't be in the United States. Is the type of individual that legal immigrants escaped from when they came to the United States, and is the type of individuals that the left wants to use as a representation for a fight against Trump. And it is simply bizarre. But the mainstream media, we ask ourselves, why Americans do not trust the media? Here's the answer. Because it's not media, it's propaganda. They are not journalists. They actually want to tell you how to think, what you see, what you hear. And thankfully right now we have social media, and we also have a president who has spoken out and has called out the media every time that they have done something dishonest, because it was actually needed to actually realize that those quote-unquote journalists are actually working for political platforms, for candidates, and for a political party. And of course, it's not the Republican Party. So yes, it is simply insane. It is simply insane because the American people should be informed about Alberto Garcia. Thankfully, they are. And they think Democrats are insane for spending money, time, and so much dedication trying to bring back or trying to keep someone here who shouldn't be here. Anyone who has common sense should say, yeah, Alberto Garcia shouldn't be here. I don't want him as a neighbor. He should be expelled of the country. He should be deported. But well, is the new left.
Yep. Or I guess they think you should go down and have margaritas with them. Either way.
Yeah.
Just before
with taxpayer money.
Yeah, exactly. Before we go today, I'm going to end on a high note because I absolutely loved how at the end of last week, the president signed an executive order to rename the Pentagon the Department of War. Let me just tell you something. If there were, if you told me right now you could choose any designation as like being a cabinet secretary, Pete Hegseth is now known as the Secretary of War. I got to be honest, that is the coolest thing I have ever heard. Apparently, once upon a time, this was just a standard, thing to be called, right? You had the Department of War and you had the Secretary of War. But in 1949, at the end of World War II, they were trying to kind of gentrify everything, make things just a little more palatable for people. And they were like, maybe we don't want the word war. Okay, I get it. You guys went through World War II. We're bringing it back, though. And I think what I actually love about it, Mary, is that it is just another position of strength for the United States. To have that designation, I think, first of all, is very cool. And I just think it's very badass. Don't get me wrong. But I think it's also just another kind of just a subtle shot across the bow to our adversaries out there. Like, don't toy with us. We got a Secretary of War. We've got a Department of War here in America, and we're ready to go. We got the Department of Defense. We also got a Department of War. I loved it, Mary. What'd you think?
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. As soon as I knew it was coming down the pipe, I was so giddy. I am like all for this kind of thing. It's been such a long time since I have seen our military look strong,
Yeah.
be strong. This has put our adversaries on notice across the world. I mean, at the same time as China and Russia and India and North Korea are buddying up, and China's doing their display of military power for their memorial, which, by the way, would never have won if it hadn't been for U.S. help. All of this was happening over there, and then you have Trump going, by the way, we're no longer calling it the Department of Defense. It will now be the War Department. Thank you so much for your attention on this matter. It's just
So good.
move. And not only does it put everybody on notice, but it also just allows them to remember once again, this is a different United States of America. This is not Joe Biden's or Barack Obama's or George Bush's America. This is America first, where we lead from strength. We don't really care who it offends. And this is what's going to happen because our main focus is America thriving, being strong, and being taken seriously again. And there is nothing more serious than letting someone know that you have a Department of War.
And also, I think, Franklin, for our military personnel, I would think that it would make them feel even prouder of their position. And, we've seen the recruitment numbers skyrocket under this president and under Secretary Hegseth, right? Like this new era in America, this kind of revived patriotism and knowing you have a president who's got your back and we're pro-America. Yeah, we're not sorry, we're saying it. That has really increased recruitment numbers, which were way down over the past 4 years. I got to imagine, Franklin, Department of War might encourage a few more people. I'd join in for that one in a heartbeat.
No, I think it is amazing, and the history behind it is too. Like George Washington in 1787, he created the Department of War. And it wasn't because he wanted to invade any country like the left wants to portray Trump right now, and not even close. George Washington didn't say that. He actually said, we have a Department of War. We won't start any war, but we would finish them. And it's this idea and this common slogan that is peace through strength. Be careful, we are the United States, we're the most powerful country on earth. If you touch us, you are going to pay for it. And I think that the Department of War actually represents that idea in a very, very excellent way. I wasn't lucky enough to be born in the US, but I was blessed enough to be able to move here, which I think is the greatest nation on earth. I love this country more than anything in my life. And every action that has done the United States around the world has always been for the better. And the Department of War represents that idea very well. This is a country of individual freedom. This is a country of Western values. And it's not going to be necessarily the police of the world in the sense that it's not going to be invading every country as the left wants to say. But in case the US has to act, it's going to act, and it's going to act stronger in the strongest way possible. And I think that's what it represents, and George Washington believed in that. It wasn't about starting new wars, quite the opposite. But if we have to act, if we're going to be involved, we're going to finish the job. And I think, it's actually fantastic. It's something beautiful. And I think it's the right name. We should go back to that idea. It's George Washington, first president of the United States. He believed in that. And we won the First World War. We won the second one too. With that name. So I think it also comes with a good present.
Yeah, I think they talked about that in the Oval Office whenever he signed this executive order, which I thought was so cool. And a great thing to point out, like that when you got a winner, you stick with a winner. I like it.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Mary and Franklin, you guys are the best. Thank you so much for joining us here today for The Right View. To everybody at home, as always, make sure you like, subscribe, share, and follow. And we'll see you back here next time for more. And I won't back down.